Just sit and imagine waking up one morning to find footprints surrounding your camp. Not animal tracks, human footprints. Someone had been watching you while you slept. Thousands of years ago, this was one of the greatest fears any prehistoric family could face. There were no police, no armies, no walls stretching across kingdoms. Survival depended on your own group. If another band wanted your hunting grounds, your water source, or even your food, there was often only one way to settle the dispute: conflict. But prehistoric warfare looked very different from the massive battles we imagine today. There were no castles, knights, or steel swords. Instead, early humans fought with simple tools, clever strategies, and an intimate knowledge of the landscape. Every battle was personal because every life mattered. Let's travel back to a time before civilization and discover how our ancestors fought, defended themselves, and survived. Early humans did not usually fight for glory or conquest. They fought because survival was at stake. The world was harsh, food was seasonal, water could disappear during droughts. Herds of animals constantly moved across the landscape. If two groups depended on the same resources, conflict became almost unavoidable. Territory was incredibly valuable. A valley with fresh water, abundant fruit trees, or migrating animals could support a family for months. Losing access to that land could mean starvation. Competition for resources was one major cause of violence. Another was revenge. If one group killed a member of another, surviving relatives often sought retaliation. These cycles of revenge could continue for generations, long before written laws existed. As human populations slowly increased, encounters between different groups became more frequent, while many meetings likely ended peacefully through trade or cooperation. Others erupted into deadly violence. The earliest weapons were simply everyday tools adapted for fighting. A sturdy wooden club could crush bones, a sharpened stick could pierce flesh. A heavy stone thrown with enough force could seriously injure an opponent. Eventually, humans began crafting specialized weapons. Stone-tipped spears became one of the greatest technological advances in prehistoric history. Carefully shaped flint points were attached to wooden shafts using plant fibers, tree resin, and animal sinew. These spears allowed hunters to kill dangerous animals from safer distances. The same technology proved just as effective against human enemies. Later innovations included throwing spears that could travel much farther than hand-thrust weapons. Then came bows and arrows. The invention of the bow transformed warfare. Instead of engaging face-to-face, warriors could strike enemies from dozens of meters away. A skilled archer could fire multiple arrows before an opponent reached him. Distance suddenly became a powerful advantage. Stone axes served many purposes. They chopped wood, they butchered animals, and when necessary, they became terrifying weapons. A polished stone axe could deliver devastating blows capable of breaking shields made from wood or injuring heavily built opponents. Flint knives were equally dangerous. Their razor-sharp edges were sometimes even sharper than modern surgical steel. Archaeologists have discovered ancient blades capable of slicing through skin and muscle with incredible efficiency. These tools remind us that survival equipment often doubled as military equipment. There was little distinction between hunting gear and weapons of war. Winning a fight wasn't only about attacking. It was also about avoiding danger altogether. Many prehistoric groups selected campsites that naturally provided protection. Some settled on hilltops where approaching enemies could be spotted from far away. Others camped near rivers, cliffs, or dense forests that acted as natural barriers. Night watches were likely common. Someone remained awake while others slept, listening for unusual sounds or watching for movement beyond the firelight. Fire itself became an important defensive tool. Its light discouraged predators, but it also exposed approaching humans who tried to sneak into camp after dark. Simple wooden fences or sharpened stakes may have surrounded some settlements during later prehistoric periods. These were not massive fortifications, but enough to slow attackers and provide precious warning. Unlike Hollywood movies featuring lone heroes, prehistoric combat depended heavily on teamwork. Groups hunted together. They also defended together. Experienced hunters already knew how to coordinate movements, communicate silently, and surround dangerous animals. These same skills translated naturally into combat. Some members distracted opponents. Others attacked from hidden positions. Knowledge of local terrain became one of the greatest weapons available. A narrow valley could trap enemies. Dense forests allowed ambushes. Rocky hills provided excellent lookout positions. Victory often belonged to the group that understood the landscape best. Direct battles carried enormous risks. Even winners could lose valuable hunters whose skills were essential for survival. Because of this, prehistoric groups probably preferred surprise over open confrontation. Attacking at dawn, ambushing travelers, striking while enemies crossed rivers. These tactics reduced casualties while increasing the chances of success. Scientists' discoveries suggest that many ancient injuries occurred from projectiles rather than close combat, supporting the idea that ranged attacks and ambushes were common. Avoiding unnecessary risks was simply good survival strategy. Unlike written history, prehistoric warfare must be reconstructed from physical evidence. Archaeologists study skeletons showing healed fractures, embedded arrowheads, and deep cuts caused by stone weapons. Some skeletons display multiple injuries that clearly resulted from violent encounters. Entire burial sites have been discovered containing victims who died together during attacks. One famous prehistoric cemetery in the Nile Valley contains numerous skeletons pierced by stone projectiles, suggesting repeated episodes of organized violence. Ancient cave art also offers clues. Some paintings depict groups carrying bows, spears, and clubs, occasionally confronting one another rather than hunting animals. Although these images are open to interpretation, they suggest conflict formed part of prehistoric life. Not at all. Conflict existed, but so did cooperation. Many neighboring groups likely exchanged food, tools, pigments, shells, and valuable stone materials through peaceful trade. Marriage between different bands created alliances that reduced hostility. Sharing information about migrating animals or seasonal plants benefited everyone. In fact, cooperation probably occurred far more often than warfare. Violence was costly. Every injured hunter weakened the group's ability to survive. Every death meant fewer people gathering food, protecting children, and caring for elders. For this reason, many disputes were likely resolved through negotiation, avoidance, or simply moving to a different territory when possible. War was usually the last option, not the first. As humans settled into farming communities around 12,000 years ago, conflict gradually changed. Permanent villages meant permanent territory. Fields required years of labor. Stored grain attracted thieves. Livestock became valuable property. Unlike mobile hunter-gatherers, farmers could not simply leave when conflict appeared. Instead, they defended what they had built. Villages constructed ditches, wooden palisades, and eventually stone walls. Weapons became increasingly specialized. Population growth also meant larger fighting forces. Small skirmishes between family groups slowly evolved into organized warfare between entire communities. This marked the beginning of a new chapter in human history. The weapons carried by our ancestors were simple: a sharpened stick, a flint knife, a stone axe. Yet behind these humble tools were remarkable minds capable of planning, cooperating, inventing, and adapting. Conflict shaped human history, but so did the desire to avoid it. Every successful negotiation, every alliance formed through marriage, and every peaceful exchange of goods helped communities survive just as much as any victory in battle. The archaeological record tells a balanced story. Our ancestors were neither peaceful saints nor relentless warriors. They were practical survivors living in a demanding world where cooperation offered the greatest rewards, but where violence sometimes became unavoidable. Understanding prehistoric warfare reminds us that human intelligence was never only about building better weapons. It was also about knowing when not to use them. Long before kingdoms rose or empires marched across continents, small bands of humans were already learning one of civilization's oldest lessons. The strongest communities were not always those that fought the hardest. They were often the ones that worked together well enough to avoid fighting whenever possible.